I have been married to Shenling for 3 years without bearing any children, and now the Emperor's most beloved princess comes to my door with a big belly. I am already carrying Shenling's child. I hope you will step down and give way to someone more worthy. In my previous life, I insisted on not divorcing. Later, the princess suffered a difficult labor, resulting in the death of both mother and child. Shenling blamed me for this, resented me, forced me to take chronic poison every day, and tortured me to death. Starting over, I smiled slightly at the princess, who was 7 months pregnant, 30,000 taels, and I'll host the wedding for you. After all, only I know that Shenling is congenitally infertile. I was reborn on the day Princess Changla came to my door. Since my parents-in-law passed away, Shenling, who had always treated me with respect, suddenly started coming home late and leaving early. His attitude towards me changed drastically, and he threatened to divorce me at the slightest provocation. I was preoccupied with managing the Shen family business left by my parents-in-law and had no time to pay attention to him, but I never expected that he would actually hook up with Princess Changla. Princess Changle came to my door and sat directly in the main seat, looking down at me condescendingly. I am pregnant with Shenling's child, and I hope you will abdicate and give way to someone more virtuous. Princess Changle's aura was overwhelming as she looked towards Shenling beside her. Shenling, however, avoided eye contact, not daring to look directly at me. I laughed. Shenling, don't you want to say something? Shenling coughed lightly. Chen Ningguan, you haven't produced an heir in 3 years. It's time to step aside. Even if there's no love between us, let's just talk about how good my parents have been to you. How can you bear to let the Shen family line die out? I have to say, my parents-in-law from the Shen family are really good to me. Shenling and I were betrothed at birth. Later, my family fell into decline, and my parents became seriously ill. My future in-laws paid for a grand funeral for my parents and welcomed me into their home. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have guarded that secret until my death in my previous life. It's just a pity. It wasn't worth it for such a person. After I died, he squandered the family business that my in-laws and I had painstakingly built up. That good-for-nothing really was useless. I looked at Shenling. Since you were already so dissatisfied with me, why didn't you divorce me? Wouldn't that have been more straightforward? To save the princess from having to make a trip while heavily pregnant, confronting me in person, you really have no chivalry. Upon hearing this, Princess Changle couldn't help but glance at Shenling a few times. Shenling visibly panicked, his eyes darting around even more. I chuckled. Because you can't, and you wouldn't dare to divorce me. I looked at the princess and said, word by word, when his parents were alive, Shenling wrote an agreement and made a solemn vow in front of them that he would never divorce me in this lifetime. One reason is that his parents knew Shenling was just a good-for-nothing, and only I could protect such a large family fortune as the Shen families. Secondly, they believed that only I would keep the secrets of the Shen family and protect their reputation. Shenling only knew one thing but not the other, so she stubbornly said, "You're just good at business, aren't you? Can't I do it too?" Princess Changla frowned. "Did you really make such a poisonous oath?" Shenling quickly explained with a smile, "I just wanted to make my parents happy. I just said it casually." Changla, don't believe Chen Ningguan's nonsense. She's trying to drive a wedge between us. Princess Changle pondered for a moment, then shook her head. "Forget it, Chen Ningguan. I know this isn't fair to you, and you're upset. I won't take anything you say to heart, but as long as you agree to the divorce, I will give you 10,000 taels of gold as compensation." Shenling was stunned. It seemed even he hadn't expected the princess to be so generous in order to be with him. A hint of glee flashed in his eyes. He must be thinking that if the princess was willing to spend 10,000 taels of gold to be with him, she would definitely spend even more for him in the future. In my previous life, upon hearing these words, I rejected the princess without a second thought, but this time, I extended 3 fingers without hesitation. Then I want 30,000 taels, not only to give up my position, but also to host the wedding for you. Chen Ningguan, you're asking for the moon, Shen Ling shouted. He already regarded Princess Changle's property as his own. When I raise the price, he naturally feels the pain, as if I'm taking money out of his own pocket. Princess Changle was also stunned for a moment. Coming back to her senses, she actually revealed a hint of admiration. All right, I'll give you 40,000 taels, and you can handle the wedding. Shen Ling was stunned and quickly advised, Changle, how can this be? How is Chen Ningguan worth 40,000 taels of gold? Princess Changle was visibly impatient. She's not worth it, but aren't my children worth it? Shen Ling immediately lost her momentum. But, you can't let her officiate the wedding. Why not? I interrupted Shen Ling. I've been married myself. Who could be more experienced than me? Shen Ling found herself unable to refute. Princess Changle nodded and said, I think what you said makes sense. When can it be ready? I replied, if the princess is in a hurry, it can be done in 3 days. It just so happens to be an auspicious day. The princess agreed. Then let it be in 3 days. Shen Ling quickly stopped her upon seeing this. But Changle, my relatives won't be able to make it to the capital within 3 days. It doesn't matter. Who said your relatives had to come? Shen Ling was stunned. But this is our joint wedding. Princess Changle's impatience was written all over her face. You've already been married once, and now you want to invite your relatives again. Aren't you ashamed? As Princess Changle finished speaking, she walked out, glancing at me as she passed. I believe in you. Don't disappoint me. After the princess left, Shen Ning dared to glare at me fiercely. What tricks are you trying to pull? I retorted. What did I do? You could have said a month later. But why did you choose 3 days later? Why don't I know what good day that is? Oh, you mean that? I chuckled softly. That's my mother's death anniversary. Isn't it a good day? The next day, I started purchasing everything needed for the wedding. After all, it was 40,000 taels of gold. I meant what I said, and I was determined to make it a grand affair, walking down the street with the servants who were carrying the purchased items. Passers-by cast all sorts of glances. It seems they all know that I am about to host the wedding for my husband. Indeed, good news doesn't travel fast, but bad news spreads like wildfire. However, I don't believe that no one is deliberately spreading the news. That afternoon, I was kidnapped by a group of people. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in the magnificent Princess Manor. Princess Changle leaned on the couch, looking at me. I smiled slightly. If the princess wanted to see me, why resort to such methods? You're the client. A word from you and I would have come. Princess Changle, this is more convenient. I came to you just to tell you that the wedding doesn't need to be extravagant. Just keep it simple. I don't understand. After all, it's the princess's first marriage. Why can't it be a grand affair? The princess shook her head. I have no intention of getting married. I just want to give the child in my belly a name. I couldn't help but ask. So the princess chose Shen Ling. The princess was silent for a moment, then chuckled. I know, my taste isn't very good. I cupped my fist in the other hand and said, same here. For a moment, the princess and I locked eyes and smiled at each other. It was in this moment that I saw her thoughts. Although I couldn't fathom the princess's intention, I was certain that the princess did not love Shen Ling. Or rather, the princess also knew that Shen Ling was infertile. Shen Ling is nothing more than a tool she uses to give her child a legitimate name. If it weren't for me, Shen Ling would indeed be a good choice, utterly foolish and easy to manipulate. Unfortunately, in my past life, I was obsessed with keeping secrets. But no matter how persistent I was, I paid it all back in my past life. In this life, I am determined to return the pain Shen Ling inflicted on me. One by one, I looked at the princess. I promise you, I'll keep everything simple. But I hope you'll also agree to one request of mine. Princess, extra money. Fine. No, I shook my head. After you marry Shen Ling, I want to take all of the Shen family's assets and the mansion. The princess laughed. I thought you'd ask me to kill Shenling. I was unconvinced. I don't care whether Shenling is alive or dead. There will come a day when Shenling will lose her value. By then, Shenling Cheng will be a discarded pawn, and killing him will be as easy as lifting a finger. But the princess asked again, that Shen residence isn't exactly a good place. What is there to miss? Shenling is certainly not worth it. But the Shen family's in-laws have treated me well. I promised my in-laws that I would definitely protect the Shen family's assets. Since I can't count on Shenling, I naturally have to take over. The princess smiled. I didn't expect you to be so magnanimous. I'll promise you that. I got up to leave, but the princess called out to me again. After a moment of hesitation, she finally spoke. After the wedding, leave the capital immediately, go as far away as possible, and don't let anyone find you. I frowned. Then when can I return? The princess said, if all goes well, it won't be more than half a year. Once things here are settled, I'll surely call you back. Settled? What is it? The princess showed no intention of explaining, so I stopped asking. Everything is at your discretion, princess. I responded without showing any emotion. It wasn't difficult for me at all. I never thought the princess would do me any harm, even though everyone in the capital said the princess was arrogant and reckless, relying on the emperor's favor. Only I knew that the princess was not that kind of person. In my past life, although I rejected her, she never used her power to force me to submit, nor did she ever do anything outrageous to me. With her status, killing me would be as easy as pie. So when she said that to me, I believed she didn't mean any harm. Before leaving, I couldn't help but ask, Princess, is your pregnancy stable? The princess paused slightly. Why do you say that? My pregnancy has always been monitored by the palace physicians, so it is naturally stable. I couldn't help but continue. Though the condition of the pregnancy is stable, it's never a bad thing to have more doctors examine it. After saying this, I lowered my head. I have overstepped. The princess looked at me with a complicated expression, as if trying to probe the thoughts in my heart. 2 days later, I officially held a wedding ceremony for the two of them. This farce of a humble wife giving way to the princess spread like wildfire throughout the capital. On the day the princess entered the mansion, the common people crowded the streets, packed tightly together. Among the guests were servants under the princess's command, as well as powerful royal relatives. But no one dared to utter a single word. Just as I stood on the hall and called out one bow to heaven and earth, suddenly more than a dozen black-clad men wielding long knives leaped down from the beams. The scene immediately descended into chaos. The guards beside the princess hurried to protect her and prepare for evacuation. Shenling was dodging and hiding, afraid of being stabbed. I took 2 steps back, but bumped into the table behind me, turning around. A long knife came swinging down toward my face. I raised my hand to block it, but saw a dagger suddenly blocking in front of me. It was the princess who rushed over, pulling out a dagger to block the blow for me. The princess clutched her stomach, writhing in pain, and turned to the guards. Take Cheningwan with you. By the time I came to my senses, I was already being carried by her guards. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself standing outside a bamboo grove. Walking along the path through the bamboo grove, I came upon a wooden cottage. In front of the cottage stood a man in blue robes, ethereal and graceful, like a celestial being. He smiled faintly when he saw me. You must be Lady Chen. I am Huaiji, the princess's personal attendant. Though he was supposed to be a personal attendant, judging by his appearance, his relationship with the princess must be unusual. Did you hear that you reminded the princess to take care of her pregnancy? Huaiji asked. I frowned. How did you know? Does the princess tell him everything? Huaiji smiled, but answered with a non sequitur. I am here to protect the princess's pregnancy. I come from a family of physicians and will certainly not harm the princess. Moreover, the fetus in the princess's womb is no ordinary child. Therefore, I hope Mrs. Chen will not speak too much in front of the princess, lest she worry too much. As soon as the words finished, a guard stepped out from inside the room, saying that the princess wished to see me. Before entering, I glanced at Huaiji once more. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but I felt as though Huaiji's gaze was warning me. On the wall inside the room hung a finely crafted bow and arrow. The princess and I are separated by only a curtain. Thank you, princess, for saving me today. I bowed respectfully. No need for such formality. It was because of me that you suffered this misfortune. Her tone sounded very weak. Chen Ningguan, leave today. Go as far away as you can. When everything is over, I'll have the guards bring you back. I nodded, but she was called back before she could leave. Chen Ningguan, based on what you've seen, if some things could be done over again, would there be a chance for a different outcome? My pupils widened suddenly. I turned my head, gazing at the figure faintly visible behind the curtain. I think, perhaps it will happen. The wind fills the tower as a storm approaches. I was escorted out of the city by guards, and along the way, I saw passers-by hurrying about, while the alley in front of the Shen mansion was eerily quiet. Not even a cup of tea's worth of time after leaving the city. I turned back to look at the city walls, only to see them surrounded by heavy troops. This had never happened in my previous life. I felt uneasy, carrying my pack and walking farther and farther away. After dark, I stayed overnight in a small town. At dawn, I hired an ox cart to continue my journey. Finally, after 3 days, a place to stay was found. It was because this village harbored a renowned physician. In her previous life, the princess suffered from unstable fetal conditions, and all the imperial doctors were helpless. The emperor was enraged, and 1,000,000 corpses lay in the streets. Someone went to fetch the reclusive physician who had long withdrawn from the world, but by the time the physician was found, the princess had already passed away. So I carried my pack and searched everywhere, eventually finding this place. This is where the physician disappeared for the last time. I settled down nearby, eating and wandering around casually each day, and before I knew it, several days had passed. Finally, by a stroke of luck, I found the divine physician. After hearing my description, the physician stroked his beard and kept saying, "Difficult, difficult, difficult. Childbirth is an extremely perilous matter," and he wasn't entirely confident he could save her. I spent lavishly and begged earnestly, and finally the divine physician gave me a pill. If fortune favors, this medicine might save a life. I took the pill and returned to the inn, but that night I heard a commotion downstairs. I opened the window and looked down. Unexpectedly, I saw Shen Ling standing downstairs with a group of servants. He frowned, disapproving of the inn's simplicity, and looked up, just in time to meet my gaze. How could Shen Ling be here? The princess's voice echoed in my mind. Don't let anyone find you. It was obvious that Shen Ling was looking for me. But why would he do that? The knock on the door came quickly. I live on the 2nd floor, and I can't fly over walls or climb rooftops. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Shen Ling's face, smiling with his lips but not his eyes. "Madam, you've made it quite difficult for me to find you." I remained expressionless. "What are you doing here? Haven't we already divorced?" Shen Ling smiled. "A day of marriage brings 100 days of affection. Have you already forgotten me so quickly, my dear?" He smiled sweetly, advancing step by step, then closed the door behind him with a flick of his hand. I glared at him. "Aren't you afraid of the princess?" Shen Ling sneered. "That old hag never took me seriously, and now that's fine. I'm not afraid of her at all." He sized me up. "Since our parents passed away, you've been in charge of the family, and I have to get money from you even to see a play. Now, it's your turn to kneel and beg me." I was silent. Shen Ling reached out to touch my face. I suddenly pulled out the dagger that the princess had given me at our farewell from my lower back and plunged it hard into Shen Ling's shoulder. Shen Ling's eyes widened. I stuffed the rag into his mouth the instant before he screamed, "Shut up if you don't want my next cut to slit your throat." Shunling watched the blood-stained dagger pressed against his neck. Large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, but he didn't dare make a sound. I asked in a low voice, "Who sent you?" Shunling rolled his eyes around, unwilling to speak. The dagger in my hand slowly moved closer to his neck. 3, 2, his legs went weak. It's the Emperor. How could it be the Emperor? The princess told me to leave the capital. There must be someone standing against her, and I would be implicated. But the Emperor is the princess's father, and has given her immense favor. I didn't lie to you. Shunling was about to piss his pants in fright, if that weren't the case. How would I dare to bypass the princess and come to you? I gradually calmed down. Yes, the way he was so fearless when I mentioned the princess. Who but the Emperor could give him such confidence? Why did the Emperor send you to find me? Shunling shook his head repeatedly. How dare I question the Emperor's thoughts? I'm just guessing, but it's probably because of the princess. I pressed the dagger closer. You're talking nonsense. The Emperor clearly dotes on the princess. I wouldn't dare lie, Shunling pleaded. You don't know, but in the few days you were away from the capital, the princess staged a coup. I was stunned, forcing the palace. That was my reaction when I heard the news, Shunling said quickly. He almost married the princess and was terrified that this capital crime would fall on him. Shunling said indignantly, "It's bad enough that a girl doesn't know her place, but she actually dares to force the palace. What audacity!" But the princess did force the palace. The Emperor sent people out to find you overnight, saying that you must have incited the princess. Me, what a huge pot. That's just baffling. Did the princess fail? I asked him. Shunling wore a bitter expression. I don't know. I set off to find you 3 days ago. It was the Emperor who gave me the news. As for what's happening in the capital now, how could I possibly know? Shunling glanced at the dagger. I've said everything I need to say. Can you put the dagger down now? I said expressionlessly. No. I moved the dagger to his waist, hiding my entire hand in my sleeve. We'll talk outside. A princess forcing the palace has only 2 possibilities. One is failure. Now that the Emperor knows my whereabouts, he will find me sooner or later. Then it's all the same whether I run or not. Second is success. Since I will succeed, there's no need for me to run. I feigned obedience to Shunling in front of everyone and got into the carriage with him to head to the capital. The carriage was stopped before we reached the capital. A familiar face was blocking the road. Huaiji smiled at me and said, "Madam Chen, long time no see. The princess sent me to pick you up." I was silent for a long time. If it had been before today, and Huaiji had come to pick me up, I would have left with him without hesitation. But now, after hearing about the princess's palace coup, I became more wary of everyone. I don't know if the princess succeeded, nor do I know if Huaiji has betrayed us. Especially since I never heard of anyone named Huaiji around her after the princess died in childbirth in my previous life. So until I see the princess, everything is unknown. Shunling saw my hesitation and suddenly began to struggle. Help! Help! I'm being held hostage by Chen Yingwan. I quickly restrained Shunling. By the time I came back to my senses, the carriage was already surrounded by Huaiji's men. I lifted the curtain and looked at the people surrounding us outside. Is this also the princess's intention? Huaiji chuckled. Just in case. As long as Madame Chen comes with me, they naturally won't lay a hand on her. Shunling was very excited. I know. You are also the Emperor's man. I've seen you by the Emperor's side. The Emperor sent you to save me, right? I stabbed the dagger into Shunling's arm again to shut him up, but Huaiji was slow to refute Shunling's words. He just smiled faintly. Madame Chen only needs to know that I will never do anything detrimental to the princess. As for Shunling, the Emperor still wants to see him, so you cannot kill him. Spare his life, and it will be beneficial to you and the princess. Shunling instantly became smug. I told you. I am highly valued by His Majesty. I expressionlessly twisted the knife again. I won't kill you, but I won't let you have an easy time either. This matter is already beyond my control. If you dwell on personal grudges and only care about immediate gains, I fear you will cut off your own retreat. I released Shenling and stepped on him. Led by Shenling, we entered the capital city, but when passing the princess's residence, the carriage did not stop. I looked sharply at Huaizhi. Where are you taking me? Huaizhi smiled faintly. The Imperial Palace, to meet the Emperor. Don't be afraid, His Majesty just wants to see you. This is the first time in my 2 lifetimes that I've seen the Emperor. The room was a mess, with priceless porcelain vases and paintings shattered all over the floor. The legendary Son of Heaven was pacing back and forth in the room, dark circles under his eyes, looking unusually agitated. You are Cheningwan. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. Chang'e thinks highly of you. I heard that after I sent someone to find you, she immediately withdrew her troops. You really do carry weight in Chang'e's heart. The princess withdrew her troops for me. I was stunned. Although the princess and I admired each other, it wasn't to this extent. Shenling, who was covered in wounds, immediately chimed in. Yes, it's her. The Emperor's gaze shifted to the dagger stuck in Shenling's shoulder. Shenling felt aggrieved. Your Majesty. Cheningwan is a vicious woman with a cruel heart. She not only instigated the princess to stage a coup but also injured this humble citizen. Your Majesty must seek justice for this humble citizen. The Emperor glanced at him with disgust, then looked at me. This dagger is Chang'e's favorite. She actually gifted it to you. Whether it was a misperception, I seemed to see undisguised jealousy and resentment in the Emperor's eyes, but soon the Emperor turned away. As long as you can persuade Chang'e, I will grant you any request. I looked at Huaizhi, who nodded slightly. I lowered my head. I hope your Majesty can enlighten me. The Emperor dismissed everyone and led me into the inner chamber. The inner chamber was clean and tidy, but the shelves displayed were not filled with rare treasures. Instead, they held items for young women, a handkerchief embroidered with lotus flowers, a pair of delicate pink little shoes, and a uniquely styled but common flower hairpin. These items, appearing in the study of the supreme ruler, seemed particularly strange. The Emperor scanned these items, sighing softly. Chang'e was my dearest, and I carefully collect everything of hers. I give her the best of everything. Yet she remains unsatisfied and even resents me for it. A few days ago, she was even incited by some people to stage a coup. Fortunately, she woke up in time and didn't make a grave mistake. In truth, I would give her anything she wants, so why does she have to have the throne? Since you have a good relationship with Chang'e, write her a letter to advise her. She is about to give birth and should not be overly worried. I lowered my eyes and nodded in agreement. Cheningwan, you are a smart one. The Emperor nodded in satisfaction. I tentatively asked, what about Shenling? The Emperor's expression changed, his tone barely concealing his disgust. That Shenling is truly disgusting. Daring to covet my Chang'e, to be assassinated on his wedding day, yet he actually survived and abandoned Chang'e. He deserves to suffer. Having said this, the Emperor turned and left the study. When I saw Shenling again, I almost didn't recognize him. He was hunched over, a head shorter than before, and his face was frighteningly pale. Shenling. I narrowed my eyes slightly. The moment Shenling saw me, he subconsciously tried to dodge, but was blocked by the old eunuch behind him. The old eunuch kicked him in the back of the leg. Hurry up and pay your respects to the esteemed guest. You're really bringing shame on us. The realization hit me like a bolt. Shenling had been castrated. Shenling glared at me resentfully. It must have been you, whispering poison in His Majesty's ear. Otherwise, with the princess carrying a child, how could I have fallen to this state? The old eunuch slapped him hard again. His Majesty has already said that Princess Chang'e's child has nothing to do with you. Dare to talk nonsense again and see what happens. Shenling snorted coldly, firmly believing in his own idea. I smiled slightly. Shenling, you don't know yet. Actually, you are congenitally infertile. Shenling's eyes widened suddenly. You're talking nonsense. It's clearly you who can't perform. I sighed. a look of pity on my face. To repay the kindness of your parents, I promised them two things. The first thing was to protect the Shen family's assets. The second thing was to hide the secret of your congenital infertility. It's all for the sake of the Shen family's reputation and your pathetic self-esteem. I didn't expect you to end up like this. I don't need to hide it anymore. I took out an ounce of silver and threw it to him. If you can't do it, go ask the imperial physician, now that I'm no longer secretly bribing the doctor. I suppose no one will be hiding anything from you anymore. Shenling looked at me in disbelief. I took one last look at him and left without turning back. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. It is said that the princess's mood has stabilized a lot after receiving my letter. These days, I often see Huaizhi going in and out of the palace. It seems he is just a fence-sitter, drifting between the emperor and the princess, so that no matter which side has the advantage, he will not suffer. A few days later, Huaizhi found the emperor in a hurry. This was the first time I had seen him with such an expression, his voice trembling uncontrollably. The princess is having a difficult labor. The emperor was shocked and frightened, sending all the imperial physicians over, but they were all helpless. At this moment, I stepped forward. Your Majesty, I once received a life-saving elixir from a divine physician. The emperor immediately looked at me and strode towards me. Bring it out quickly. I remained calm. I have hidden this elixir somewhere in the capital. I need to see the princess before I can reveal the location of the medicine. On the surface, I was calm, but I nervously glanced at Huaizhi in secret. He escorted me to the capital all the way, so naturally he knew that I didn't have time to hide the elixir. However, Huaizhi met my eyes and didn't expose me. The emperor grabbed my neck and used both coercion and enticement. I insist on seeing the princess before taking the medicine. The emperor threw me aside violently. Take her to the princess's mansion. In the end, he didn't dare to gamble with the princess's life against me. A quarter of an hour later, I saw the princess. Her face was pale, and blood flowed continuously from her lower body, but she raised a faint smile at me. Cheningwan. You've come, I knew it. We are the same. I quickly took out the prepared elixir and fed it to her. Princess, you will be fine. The princess twitched the corner of her mouth and looked at Huaizhi, whose expression was unclear. Huaizhi, I want you to swear on the life of our child. If I don't make it through today, you must ensure Cheningwan's safety. I looked sharply at Huaizhi. The latter nodded slowly. This child is actually Huaizhi's. The princess suddenly took my hand. If I can get through this, I'll explain everything to you. After saying that, the princess was struck by another sharp abdominal pain. When I left last time, I heard the princess say that to me. I knew then that she, like me, had been reborn. Perhaps from that moment on, our fates were intertwined. I was led to a remote courtyard by the servants and soon heard that the princess was in critical condition. The emperor, desperate to see the princess one last time, rushed from the palace to see Chang'e, disregarding everything else. Even though Chang'e had recently staged a coup and even tried to kill the emperor, the front yard was a hubbub of noise, with the faint sound of swords clashing. The commotion continued until late into the night. When Huai came to find me, I could smell the heavy stench of blood on him. He smiled at me and said, "It is done." My voice trembled slightly. "Explain clearly, whose matter has been settled?" Huaizhi couldn't help but laugh. The princess's matter. The next time I saw Princess Chang'e was in the imperial palace. She was very weak, but still managed to hold my hand tightly, asking me to look at her child. "It's a girl," Chang'e said softly, looking into my eyes again. "I did it. And it's all thanks to you." I shook my head. She dismissed everyone, leaving only the two of us in the large room. The exquisite bow still hung on the wall. Chang'e said, "You've been by the Empress' side for a while. You should know something about him. Since the Empress Dowager passed away, he has placed all his emotions on me. In the year I turned 14, he truly began to see me as the Empress Dowager. And from then on, I have lived in his shadow. I constantly tell myself, don't be driven mad, and even more so, don't become like him. Changla looked towards the bow on the wall. During those days, the only way I could vent was through archery. I could even hit the bullseye from 100 paces. My master said if I were a man, I would definitely lead troops into battle. Speaking of those days, a light flickered in Changle's eyes. Later, I met Huaiji. He was responsible for teaching me poetry and books, and we slowly became familiar. I brought him along when I built the Princess Manor. The emperor always thought Huaiji was his confidant, helping him monitor me all these years, so he was never on guard, but in reality, Huaiji has been helping me to undermine him. I nodded slowly and looked at the swaddling clothes again. Then this child is really Huaiji's. Changla nodded. It's just that the emperor thinks the child is his. Changle chuckled. Otherwise, why would he be so anxious, hearing that I and the child were about to die? And running out of the palace,